I believe that it's about time we started to look at the real source of the myriad problems that we keep spending so much money on. The problems of welfare, the problems of crime, the problems of deteriorating educational performance. It's time we started to think about what are the real roots of all those problems. And you and I both know that they didn't begin yesterday, and they don't end with the problems of the taxes and the budget deficit. Actually, I have a feeling they began quite some time ago. They probably began in the 1960s. They began when some people in this country decided that we were going to do what no civilization in the history of the world had ever done. We were going to see if we could make a go of it without relying on the family system, without relying on any decent moral standards, without relying on any respect for any will but our own. We were going to try to build a future for this country. And there were some people, I'll never understand why, there were some people in the generation that in those days, I guess, was in its 40s and 50s and so forth, and they just looked at that, and they looked at their children clamoring in the street, and they looked at all the demonstrators saying how irrelevant they were, and they surrendered. And I think in 1990, we have looked around ourselves, and we have seen our streets filled with more and more violence, and our schools filled with more and more intimidation. And we have seen so many homes disintegrating because the sense of responsibility and commitment that's needed for family life has been destroyed. And I think many Americans, not just in the Republican Party, but all over this great land of ours, are looking back on the last 30 years and 40 years, and they're saying, yes, we did get off the track. It's time to bring America home. But I don't quite understand. You know, there's a time to do everything in life. The Bible says that. To everything there is a season. When Ronald Reagan came into office in 1980, those of us who can still, as I think many of us do, remember the dark days of the late 1970s in the world, can understand why it was that he made it his #1 top priority to make sure that America recovered its will and confidence and strength in the international arena to stand up to the threat that was posed by Soviet communist totalitarianism. And you know what he did that I always found remarkable? What he did was not just to sit down and make all these wonderful specific plans and so forth. What he did that I think was really the key to everything was that he decided he would stand up. And one day he did. He went over to Europe, and he was going to give to the world a sense of what was really at stake. And he stood up and he looked the world in the eye and he said, you know, this is not just about the United States and the Soviet Union. It's not just about who has the armies and the nuclear weapons and the tanks and the planes. It's not just about the economic future and so forth and so on. He made it very clear. He said, that's the evil empire. We are the good guys and we are fighting for what is right. He stated with clear-eyed precision the moral issue that was at stake in that international struggle. And by making clear what was at stake at a moral level, he did revive our will and confidence. And before you knew it, our enemies evaporated like smoke, faster than any of us ever thought would happen. But you know, we're faced with a domestic challenge today. And I think that what's needed, people say they want to finish the Reagan Revolution and do this and that. You know, if you want to finish the Reagan Revolution, why don't you try emulating the Reagan formula? Why don't you try looking the American people in the eye and making it clear what is really going wrong in this country? Making it clear that all the money in the world isn't going to solve the problems that are rooted in the collapse of our moral values, our moral fabric, our moral foundations. And when we're willing to make that issue clear, and I don't mean it either, my friends, as an afterthought tacked on to the speech somewhere. I don't mean it either as a one-time event to please somebody out there who's putting pressure on you to speak to the right things. I mean to recognize what Ronald Reagan recognized, that there was a #1 priority that this country has to address. And there is today a #1 priority. We got to get our moral house in order. We're not going to solve our problems, no matter what we do, until we face up to the great moral issues of our time and get back where we belong. Now that can mean having to face some pretty tough issues. I know that. It means, by the way, that you really shouldn't be able to stand up in a public place. It amazes me how bold the people are who are on the wrong side of these issues. You know, when Bill Clinton nominated Henry Foster, he didn't get in the back room and so forth and so on when the abortion issue came out and hide his face and so forth and so on. He just got out there and said, this is my guy, I'm standing with him. He's wrong on the abortion issue, but he was bold and shameless about being wrong. We are right on the pro-life issue, and yet those candidates who believe as we believe aren't willing to stand up and speak out for what is right, and I don't understand why. I don't understand why especially when we can prove chapter and verse that every major problem we face in this country is tied to the collapse of the marriage-based two-parent family. And I can prove chapter and verse that the hardness of heart, the sense of selfishness, the belief that we are the measure of all things that is at the heart of the abortion issue is exactly what is killing family life in America today. When you tell our young women that they can reach into their womb and rip out the innocent life of their unborn children, you are sanctioning an attitude toward human life that reduces human beings to mere instruments of our convenience and passion. That is the most evil attitude of all. So don't talk to me. So I will say, I have to look all my colleagues except a few like Bob Dornan over there, who I think would stand up with the best of them, including myself, and fight for the rights of the unborn every day. I have to look some of my colleagues in the eye on the campaign trail here and say, you can talk all you want about restoring family strength and family values. If you're not willing to talk straight to the American people about the corrupt moral principle that is destroying our family life, then you don't mean what you say. But you know, when I talk this way, everybody says I have to be practical, and I guess I do. But I should think that by now, with all the studies and surveys telling us that crime and violence and drug addiction and teenage pregnancy and poverty all correlate most closely with the collapse of the marriage-based family, I would think that somebody would have realized that this is the practical issue. This is the issue that we've got to solve if we don't want to bankrupt this country. Because a country that is morally bankrupt today is a country that's going to be really bankrupt tomorrow, spending all that money trying to clean up the mess we're making because we've gotten so out of control. And I think it's also true, even of the big issues of the day. You know, it's clear that we're not going to solve the budget problem, for instance, till we're willing to face up to the significance of Social Security and Medicare and Medicaid in their contribution to the budget. But I wonder if you've really thought about what those issues are about. Since the 1960s, do you know what we've been trying to do? We've been trying to substitute the government system for the family system as the way of taking care of people in this country. The Democratic liberals try to stand up and tell us as Republicans that we don't care about taking care of people. I care deeply. But when people ask me who should take care of all those children, do you know what I say? I say the parents ought to take care of them. And when they ask me who should take care of our elderly and our senior citizens, I say, I think their children ought to take care of them. I think that it's time that we began to understand that family isn't just about rhetoric. The family system is the system that has let human beings take care of each other for thousands of years the right way, by building up their confidence, building up their strength, instead of tearing down their will to live better for themselves. And I think it's time we decided, not that we're going to make balancing the budget and all that. You know how you'll balance the budget? If we make restoring the marriage-based family the #1 priority of everything we say and do for the next generation, we will balance the budget. We'll balance the soul. We'll balance the heart of America, and we will get back home. So I'd like to invite you all, each and every one, to join with me in what I think is going to be a great movement in America. They keep asking me whether I'm going to win or lose, and I'll tell you I don't know. On any given day of the week, I don't care either. But I am going to get out, and I am going to tell it like I think it is, and I'm going to invite everybody who has the spirit of the real America to join with me, because the American founders didn't ask whether they were going to win or lose. They were facing the best military force in the world, and they went out and fought for freedom anyway. And the abolitionists against slavery in the 40s and 50s in America didn't ask whether they were going to win or lose. And when they burned down their houses and lynched their families, they still kept on keeping on because they knew that they were right. So if you have that kind of spirit, the spirit that's willing to put one foot in front of another, not asking who the victor shall be, but sure that if you win a victory, it shall be in the right cause, then you join Alan Keyes. Because we're going to be here now, we're going to be here in March, we're going to be here in San Diego, we're going to hold that banner of American principle and American standards on high every day in this campaign season. And I believe that as I'm finding all around this country, thousands of people who don't care about the money and the name recognition will rally round because they understand that elections aren't a horse race. They're about the future of this country. And I think we can build a future on the strong, decent foundations of our strong American principles if we turn back to the moral identity that made us a people great and strong in the first place. A people capable of doing what our founders did, of putting our hand in the hand of God and relying upon His divine providence and respecting His gracious will, move forward into a future that will be brighter for His blessing, because we understood that liberty isn't really about the money and the material things. It's about the opportunity we have to show to all the world that humankind does indeed have the decent capacity to govern its passions, to govern its will, to govern itself. That's really the mission of America. Our founders laid it out real clear for us. And I think instead of being sidetracked down all these roads where people are promising us the baubles of materialism, why don't we remember that America was in the first place about the moral dignity of human beings and get back to the right mission of this great nation, which is to be a shining example of what can be accomplished by humankind when we live under a charter of liberty with respect for the will of God and with the determination that we shall pass on the discipline of freedom to our children and our grandchildren for as long as God allows this republic to survive. Thank you very much.